Good afternoon, brothers and sisters. I wanted to share with you some reflection. It's some writing that I had done today about what it is like when you are having a conversation with the father of lies, with a wicked, evil, unrighteous, unholy, demonic presence or spirit, demon, whatever you want to call it. And what I was writing about today was my experience really struggling mentally and what a conversation looks like when I am in the middle of an experiencing psychosis, when I'm having a psychotic episode, when my schizophrenia is wreaking havoc upon my life, and really what it looks like for me when I'm 100% struggling, when my own thoughts are deceiving, when the voices I'm hearing are deceptive, when the demons and when Satan is trying to attack me and convince me that wrong is right, that evil is righteous, that wickedness is good, and what that I think it's internal, but what that struggle is like when you're battling yourself. And so I wanted to share with you kind of what goes on, at least for me personally, as someone who has schizophrenia, of what that head-to-head battle, what that confrontation is like. So this piece that I wrote is called Gymnastics with the Father of Lies. And it really talks about, like what I said, is that confrontation in the wilderness when Satan attempts to deceive, when he attempts to twist scripture and twist what Heavenly Father says, and when he's trying to get you to believe his own lies, what he's spewing, which is wrong, which is always wrong, but he's saying it in a way that sounds plausible. It sounds like it could be true, so maybe there's some truth in it. No, not at all. We can't be deceived by, we cannot be deceived by him. We just can't. We can't let it happen. So I'm going to read this to you. And what I'm going to tell you right away is this took some time for me to write. And so it is quite philosophical. There is a lot of wordplay and analogies and parables, and it's going to be hard for some people to understand, and that's okay. Not everyone is intellectual or has a brain capacity or even the intellect to be able to understand some literature. It's just, we all have our gifts and qualities that make us who we are, and it's just, some people just aren't literate when it comes to poetry and short stories and literature overall, and it's okay. So we are going to start. So here you go. The bus heaves like a tired beast and settles under the gray. I clutch the pole, my knuckles cold as sermon pages. Outside, the city breathes rain. Inside, my thoughts rearrange themselves. Someone sits beside me who isn't on the schedule. He smells like the memory of smoke and a thrift store cologne. And his smile is the kind of smile that knows the cracks in your name. Long ride, I say? My voice is smaller than it used to be. He answers like a clock that wound itself back to mischief. Longer if you want it, shorter if you bargain. He folds himself against the bus seat like a secret. His eyes are glass marbles dipped in midnight. You're early, I tell him. I didn't invite you. Invitations are for weddings, he says. I crash funerals and breakfast tables. People read screens, grip groceries, pretend the world is a flat map. I hear the whisper that's been my shadow since the first time a bottle taught me to listen. You're quieter today, I say. Where do you keep your thunder? He laughs like a coin falling down a well. In the places you don't look, he says. You remember the names you swore you would forget? I remember everything. How hands shook in dark rooms, the taste of surrender, the sound of a mother that left. And you, I ask, what do you want? What do you want on this wet Tuesday? He tilts his head as though the rain on the window is a hymn he's translating badly. What I always want, he says, a word, a choice. You handing me a little of you, shiny and warm. Outside, a stoplight blinks like a tired halo. The bus inhales a rumble in its chest. I keep my eyes on the floor. He keeps his on I keep my eyes on the floor. He keeps his on me. The world narrows to the space between a pair of blinking taillights. You can't sit here, I tell him, because rules are armor when You can't sit here, I tell him, because rules are armor when the blood remembers to tremble. I can, he says, and I can sing into the hollows you left for me. His voice runs honey slick down the spine of my day. He offers histories like candy, each one a small forgetting. I consider the cost, I consider the shape of grace like a pocket knife. He watches me do the math of old debts and newer mercies and smiles like he owns the ledger. You still believe the same things, he asks, if faith were a sweater, moth-eaten and sentimental. I want to tell him that the map I carry is de-geared but true, that someone called louder than my shame. Instead, I say, I believe what keeps me from collapsing. Sometimes that's a sermon, sometimes it's a song. He snorts, convenience, faith, how quaint. You can keep the sarcasm, I say, it doesn't fit me anymore. He studies the ceiling where a fluorescent light hums like an angel with a broken wing. Jesus, he asks, rolling the name like a stone in his palm. Was he loud? Quiet? Hands like hammers or hands like bread? He was both, I say. My throat tightens He was both, I say. My throat tightens. Something warm rising like remembered bread. He was a city in a whisper. He turned tears into maps. He smirks. Maps? People like maps when they're lost. But maps are paper. Paper burns. Paper also protects books, I tell him, and books sometimes survive fires. A kid laughs in the back, a sound like someone snapping a twig. The bus pauses at a stop. A woman with a stroller boards and hums a nursery rhyme badly. You make me nostalgic, he says suddenly. Nostalgia for sins you've already paid for. It's not nostalgia, I correct him, it's memory. Memory keeps me honest about who I was so I can see who I am. He reaches out a finger and taps the back of my hand, not touching but like an accusation in the air. Honesty is overrated. Confession is profitable. I laugh, thin and hard. Profit from confession gets you in trouble with God. Which God, he counters. There are many gods in city buses. Money, appetite, the little voice that says, why not? Traffic moves like a river, dragging the city along. He leans in, tells me a secret, he says. Traffic moves like a river, dragging the city along. He leans in. Tell me a secret, he says. Tell me something you've held under your breath so long it's become a cough. My secret tastes like copper and nostalgia. I could hand it over like a bar of soap and watch him wash himself clean on it. But confession is a threshold, and I remember the church pews like mother birds. Soft, stern, you're asking for a feast. I say, I'm only offering tea. Tea is fine, he says, unless you prefer the stronger stuff. The bus rattles and the world pitches slightly. Somewhere a radio crackles a hymn. I used to know. I feel both lost and a kind of stubborn grace. You ever miss the easy exits, he asks, voice slick with old promises. The exits that promise to erase, I say. No, they were crowded with roads that led to the same cliff. He smiles like someone who keeps a cliff in his coat pocket. Cliffs have composers, he says. They write the best finales. Finales are for the stage, I tell him. My life is stubborn, improvised. He offers me images, gold coins melting into coffee, a lover's hand that never says goodbye, a sleepy supermarket aisle where nothing asks questions. You could have those, he murmurs. We can pretend the past never happened. We can make the noise softer. You want quiet, don't you? Silence is a currency I know how to spend, but quieter is different than healed. Quiet can be a coffin. You always pitch retreat as reward, I say, but it's mostly a trap with a velvet lining. It's a velvet lining, he says. Velvet is comfortable. Comfortable sells. The bus rocks. A man in a suit glares at his phone like it stole something precious. A teenager tucks his headphones deeper, worlds colliding in plastic and blinking lights. You fear being known, the hallucination says. You fear being small and messy and loud. I fear being betrayed by my own hands, I reply. I've sold pieces of myself before. I don't want to keep that tax. He laughs, a sound like distant thunder in a churchyard. You could be a king in a small kingdom. Pain is the price of sovereignty. I don't want crowns made of glass, I say. I want steady things. He leans closer. For a second, the bus seems to tilt under the weight of his breath. Steady is often earned by sleeping with compromises, he whispers. You could sleep elegantly. At the next stop, an old woman boards with a bag of apples. She counts her change with an economy of prayer. The hallucination watches her hands. Simple, he says. Just simple. Take one apple and the rest will follow. She sits, seeing me looking, and smiles like she remembers me from a church I never attended today. Her palm rests like a benediction on the bag. I think about eating an apple and not asking if it will make the world stop spinning. I think about small things that anchor. No bargains, I say gently but with grit. Not today. He shrugs as if the sky were only his cloak and he could fold it up. You always surprise me, he says, but not in the way that matters. You called him, he says, the name you breathe like a lamp. The name is heavy with redemption and coffee-stained hymns. Saying it in public used to feel like bringing bread to a table. Now it feels like offering that might not be accepted. You think I forgot his voice, I say? You think I don't hear the way it rearranged my broken bits? He taps the palm of his hand twice. Faith rearranges also. It rearranges beds and expectations. It rearranges time so you can live as if the past is an eyelid you can close. His voice didn't make me forget, I say. It taught me how to face my fears. He scoffs softly. Facing your fears takes courage. Then I will chew it, I say. I will chew it until it becomes something I can swallow. A child bangs a drum on the floor, rhythm like a heartbeat. The bus is full of small battles. Someone's phone rings and the ringtone sounds like a taunt. You use his name like armor, he says. That's cute. Armor doesn't always fit. I don't use it like armor, I reply. I use it like a map that keeps me walking. Maps are boring, he says. Maps are predictable. Where's the fun in predictable? The fun in predictable is surviving long enough to have second breakfast. I say, thinking of mornings that aren't flayed upon by hunger. He leans back, contemplative. What if your map has a blind spot? What if you've been walking a loop and calling it progress? I consider the loop. I consider the days where prayer was as automatic as breathing and the days it was as rare as summertime. I've seen loops, I say. I've stepped on the same plank twice, but he's the one who helped me step off the loop. He taps his teeth with a fingernail. You're sentimental, he says. You keep relics, old scriptures, old songs. You light candles in the dark and pretend you're not also a shadow. There is a shadow, I agree, and there is light. The two are not the same thing. You are always so dramatic, he says suddenly, not a taunt, but almost fond. You string metaphors like rosaries. I've had time, I say. Time is where metaphors grow. He smiles. Time makes people tender or tough. You choose tender. Tender doesn't mean weak, I say. Tender means you can feel the pain of others and still offer a hand. That's inefficient, he says. Efficiency is the modern gospel. Inefficiency makes you vulnerable to kindness. Kindness is not a weakness, I state. It's a line drawn in the sand. We ride through a neighborhood that smells of frying onions and children's shoes left by the door. An old mural of an eagle peels like an old promise. The bus rocks to the rhythm of an ordinary city breathing. You ever want to stop hearing me? He asks. Close the window, plug the ears, sell the bus ticket, and go home. I did once, I admit. Home was a room with a blue light and a voice that said, one more. I traded peace for the promise of forgetting. He nods, slow as a chess master. Forgetting is attractive. I sell it in neat labeled packages. I don't buy from you anymore, I say. Your wrapping paper is always stained. He laughs, and it's a private sound. You should have seen yourself when you were younger. Bright, easy to persuade. Now you're stoic and stubborn. Stubbornness kept me alive, I say. Stubbornness is a survival trait. He studies my hands, the knuckles, the small scars like constellations. You're beautiful in a demolished sort of way, he says. It has symmetry. Stop, I tell him. Flattery is how you gaslight people into letting you in. He smiles. Gaslighting is hardly my style. I prefer direct offers. A man in a hoodie smokes by the doors. A lady in a navy coat hums to herself. The city is small and intimate, a community of strangers who meet at intersections and never meet again. You think you're done? He asks. Done with betting on the wrong horse? No, I say. I'm done betting at all. I put my chips on the table, called recovery, and walked away. He taps the pole as if counting invisible coins. You walked away from the wheel, but wheels are seductive. I don't want to spin anymore, I insist. I want solid ground. What's your favorite sin to whisper? I ask, meeting his eyes now. I'm tired of being the hunted thing. He considers like a reader choosing a favorite verse. I enjoy nostalgia for what was lost, he says. Guilt for what you haven't yet done, the old friend doubt. You romanticize my pain, I say. You pretend it's art. Pain is art, he replies. It's the only medium that can keep an audience. I think about the faces I've loved and the hands I've broken and the nights I woke up with the taste of regret like pennies in my mouth. Sharing that with him is like handing him tinder. You use names like keys, I say. You call them up, lust, anger, loneliness, and they open. He smirks. Names are powerful. You named a carpenter. People still argue about him. I feel a pang of something like prayer. He's the one who taught me to rename my past, I say. He called my shame something else, less final. Rebranding, he mutters, marketing for souls. Maybe I allow, but the brand came with a life after the ad. A bus driver yawns and glances at the rear view. An adolescent sneezes loudly and apologizes to nobody. Life keeps being ordinary in between our metaphysical wrestling. You ever think about leaving me a little window, he asks? You know, a habit that's been sanitized just enough to keep you company. Sanitized sin still bites, I say. It's the wolf in a cardigan. You're moralistic, he says. It's charming in a pathetic sort of way. Pathetic is better than fatal, I retort. Pathetic is a version of alive. He leans forward, conspiratorial. Alive is a messy business. I can make it easier. Easier doesn't always mean better, I say. Sometimes better is harder. Sometimes mercy calls for work. He tilts his head, studying the world like it's a scar. He tilts his head, studying the word like it's a scar. He tilts his head, studying the word like it's a scar he's never quite read. Work? That's your answer. How quaint. He looks out the window, watching a dog chase its tail, as if mocking ownership. You cling to work like it's a lifeline, he says, but sometimes we just want to float. I'd rather row, I say, at least then I get to choose the direction. He smiles wider, like a crescent moon slicing the city. Choose then, he says. Choose between the comfortable dark and the inconvenient light. The bus stops, doors open with a sigh. The city inhales and it exhales. All of us, players in various states of readiness. I heard you pray once, he says softly, a sound that surprises me with softness. You thought no one could hear? You like listening to private things, I say. You eavesdrop on prayers and pluck out the tender bits. You're the one who whispered them, he replies. You handed them to me, then acted surprised when they didn't come back whole. I didn't hand them to you, I say. I handed them up. He chuckles. Up or out? Semantics. I still hear the echo. I remember kneeling on a floor that smelled like lemon cleaner in fear, pressing my forehead to wood, speaking into a dark I thought might swallow me. The words were simple. Help, keep, forgive. The world answered with small mercies, sometimes with thunder. You always had a pocket for prayer, he says. You kept it like a talisman. You keep it like a lifeline, I correct, not a talisman. Or I keep it like a lifeline, I correct, not a talisman. He narrows his eyes. Talisman, lifeline, words are all garments. Garments can warm you, I say, or they can suffocate. The bus glides under an overpass. The diesel scent mixes with coffee and wet wool. People do small necessary things, tie shoes, count bills, and soothe children. The city is a congregation of small mercies. You ever think he's tired of you, he asks, as casual as reading a newspaper. The question lands like cold rain. No, I say without thinking. The answer is immediate, like a reflex. If he were tired, he would have shown me how to stand. If he were tired, he wouldn't have shown me how to stand. He studies my face as if appraising a painting. That's either faith or arrogance, he muses. Maybe it's both, I say. Faith keeps me honest. Arrogance would claim I did it alone. He leans back, satisfied with the ambiguity. Ambiguity is useful, he says. People live there comfortably. Comfortable doesn't always align with grace, I say. Sometimes grace is uncomfortable because it changes you. He shrugs. Change is messy. He shrugs. Change is messy. Someone laughs in the front. The sound ricochets like a bell. The bus slows near my stop. I feel the weight of the day in my knees and the soft steady of the name in my chest. You could forget me, he says, almost pleading. It'd be less dramatic. I could forget you, I reply, but then I'd forget the warning bells. He studies the way I say warning as if it were a flavor. You like warnings, he says. They make you feel moral. They make me feel alive, I answer. They keep me choosing. The bus brakes, metal singing the song of endings. My stop glows like an island. I stand, palms clammy, the pole cold, under my hand. He stands too, though he has nowhere to go. You'll walk now, he asks. The world You will walk now, he asks, the words soft with yesterday's promises. I will walk, I say. My steps are simple arithmetic, 1 foot then another. He follows a pace behind me that feels like memory. You ever think you'll be perfect, he asks? That someday you'll close the ledger and call it even? No, I say, and honestly, no, I say, and the honesty is a small, clean bell. Perfection isn't the point. Faith is showing up when the ledger looks impossible. He laughs, a small, indulgent thing. You're tedious when you're righteous. You're theatrical when you're wicked, I return. We each have our trade. The night air is crisp in my face. Streetlights watch like sleepy priests. I feel the city around me, the hum of neon, the distant echo of someone singing off key. He leans in one last time. One little drink, he whispers, one small thing, and we'll call it even for the night. I think of the last time one small thing rearranged my life. I think of hands I hurt, of promises I bent but didn't break. I think of the voice that kept pulling me back from the edge like a patient rescuer. I refuse the small thing, I say. I refuse the compromise. He studies my face, his expression unreadable for a single beat. You are stubborn, he says at last. Maybe that's your salvation. Maybe it is, I say. The word tastes like hope and iron. He tilts his head almost as if in affection. You could be kinder to yourself, he says. You could let me teach you the economy of ease. You could be kinder to yourself, I answer. You could stop pretending you're charming. He grins, and in that grin I almost see something like regret, or a memory of it. We will always have the bus, he says. We will always have the rain. And we will always have the choice, I say, because rain doesn't decide for me. He dissolves as the lights move, a shadow that becomes less defined with each step, until he's only a memory in the warm pocket of the city's night. I walk home under a sky that is neither merciless nor mild, just wide enough for second chances. My pockets hold keys and a crumpled prayer. My hands are steady, my feet now the route. On the last corner, I whisper the name that saved me once and will save me again. Not for the poetry of it, but because mouths are made to call for help. The city listens in its way, an answering chime of distant church bell, the answering chime of a distant church bell, or maybe just a bus store shutting. Either way, I keep walking. So that is what I wrote today. It took me a while to write this just because it's a bit philosophical and it's not something that I would say is easy to understand. It takes quite a lot of imagery or imagination and creativity to really think about what I'm talking about in this. And like I said, it's not for everyone, and that's fine. But really, that's what I feel like, is that when I'm talking with the father of lies, when he's trying to entice me, when he's trying to deceive me, it's like we're in mental gymnastics. It's like we're in this, it's like we're in a chess game. And there's a lot of strategy involved. And he's careful with what he says. Because if you're truly love and follow Christ, you're going to know how to retort. You're going to know how to respond to him. And based on your response, he might have to switch things up. That's what happened to Jesus Christ in the wilderness when he was tempted. That Satan was using scripture, was using God's own words, and was twisting them and trying to get Jesus to believe in his lies. And the way he was twisting scripture, he was trying to trick Jesus. So it's a game of deception with the father of lies. It truly is. But I just wanted to share this with you, what I wrote. This is a long video, so I apologize. I'm going to include the link of this poetry piece in the description of this video, so please check it out. Please read it. I actually worked hard on this one, so I appreciate if you guys read it over. Let me know what you think. Fill the comments of this video and just, message me if you want. So thank you guys so much. Peace and blessings. I love you guys. Peace out and have a good night. Love you guys.